Let's discuss this with Dr. Zaheer Shah. He's an internal medicine specialist in the U.S., joins us from Phoenix in Arizona. Thank you so much for your time, doctor. The WHO is describing what's happening in India as beyond heartbreaking. And when we look at some of those visuals, it's so difficult to imagine what it must be like for patients and their families. But what's the best way for India to try to combat this crisis at the moment?
Well, depending on where you are in India, they've already seen multiple surges of COVID-19. And now I think what we're seeing is a lack of preparedness for the eventuality or possibility of this latest surge. They need oxygen. They need hospital beds, obviously. I think oxygen is the most critical component of how to deal with this, as well as obviously the need for vaccinations. I know that the U.S. has offered it some of its store of some of the vaccines. I think other countries are going to have to recognize that this is a globally connected pandemic, and that when one of us is suffering, then eventually we'll all suffer as a result. And so hopefully the world will gather together and provide the oxygen and the vaccines that are necessary to curtail this most recent devastating surge.
Dr. Shah, coming from a medical perspective and a doctor's perspective, if you're in the situation in one of those hospitals in New Delhi, who do you prioritize? How do you go about trying to help those most in need when the numbers are just piling up every day?
Well, I've seen interviews of physicians in India, and they're heartbreaking interviews because these are physicians that are highly trained and capable of saving lives, but are unable to do so because they're lacking in the most basic of necessities like oxygen. You know, this is a disease of the pulmonary system. The coronavirus is a respiratory virus. Its primary home in the human body is in the lungs, and shortness of breath or hypoxemia are the cardinal manifestations of this disease. And having been a physician now for a quarter of a century, I can tell you that one of the most awful ways to die is by running out of air, and that unfortunately is what is happening. And the doctors there simply have been hamstrung by the fact that there's not enough oxygen to go around. The Indian government has to step up. They have to stop denying the existence of this pandemic. They have to stop pretending like this pandemic would simply go away and encouraging political rallies and religious gatherings and other activities that really accelerated the spread of these new variants. And so the very least they can do now is at least release government stores of oxygen, as well as cooperate with other international bodies to provide these doctors with the basic tools that they need.
And doctor, you mentioned the new variants. How much of a role have they played in the numbers going up in India?
Well, I think they've played a critical role, but that's all anecdotal, and that's because in India, there's been very limited genomic sequencing. One of the things that you have to do to monitor a pandemic is continue to get samples from the population and determine what variants are affecting the people. We know that there is a unique variant in India that is responsible for a significant portion of the suffering and death that is happening. Clearly, a new variant has entered into New Delhi, has entered into Mumbai, and is causing carnage like none that they've seen previously. So I believe that the new variants played a huge role in this latest surge.
Dr. Zaheer Shah, really appreciate your time and your perspective on what's happening in India. Live to us there from Phoenix. Thank you.